All right. Happy Thursday evening, everyone. Thanks for joining Office Hours Live. For those of you who haven't joined us before, I'm Kamara Toffolo, resume writer, LinkedIn consultant, and job search strategist who helps working professionals dare to do work differently and land great fitting gigs. I'm super excited to have my friend Amy Davies with us tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk all about not everyone's favorite topic, but layoffs. It is something that's affecting a lot of us now, especially. And Amy is definitely an expert in reorganization as well as navigating layoffs. She is the CEO and founder of First 30, which is a very innovative outplacement firm. And we're going to talk a little more about outplacement later on, but we will really focus on navigating layoffs and what we should really do in terms of taking action and just overall coping with the many emotions that come with being laid off, because there's a lot. Feel free to get your questions into the chat. We will address them as we go along or near the end, but all questions welcome. So without further ado, I want to welcome Amy Davies to Office Hours. Welcome,
Hi.
Amy.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks. How about you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. I had exciting news this week. We're getting a puppy.
Oh, you are?
I'm very happy about that.
That's great.
It's a good news story. I've been looking for one forever. Yeah.
What breed?
Doberman.
Oh, a Doberman.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
I grew up with big dogs, so I'm pretty familiar with the breed. And
that's great.
We just got news yesterday that the puppies have been born. And so we'll have a puppy joining our family in either very late December or early January.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful news. That'll be such a nice addition to the family.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
Great. Yeah, puppies are the best. I love puppies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm actually excited to have an adult dog, but I'll bear with the puppy to get that.
Yeah. Well, they grow quite fast. So
yes.
Well, that's great. And we have people signing in now. And T. Sheldon from Bellevue, Washington says hello.
Hi.
So hello, T. Sheldon. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, let's talk about layoffs, which is a kind of a difficult topic. Yeah, which I'm sure you talk about quite a bit in your work. I think with layoffs, sometimes they're welcome depending on the situation, but oftentimes they come as a shock. Even now with COVID and so many reorgs or restructuring or just downsizing. So what, in your opinion, what's the best way to really manage those many different emotions of a layoff that come with a layoff?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I normally tell people, I mean, I've, as you know, written a book all about having a successful career in what I call a reorg world, where we're constantly losing or changing our jobs. And I know that doesn't help people like right now, but what I would say is that we should look at our lives as ever changing, and the possibility of restructuring and us getting laid off is always on the table. So one thing that I would really recommend is that when someone's in their job, even if they feel safe, that they really think through what the possibilities are and that this could happen, and prepare, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So always talk to Kamara and have your resume ready. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date. But if you now find yourself in a situation where you have been laid off, and it's very hard news to get. So I've been laid off twice. I have, both times I was expecting it, but I think that's because I'm very realistic, and I was in a department that was considered a cost center. So it's often the cost centers that get looked at first, and it was like the team was wiped out, and you have to know that it is not personal. And the best thing that someone can do immediately to handle the emotion of the layoff is to depersonalize the layoff, especially now more than ever, and then start working through the emotions that come with it. One thing that, and actually we have a psychologist in the First 30 program, Dr. Mary Lynn, and what she recommends is that you definitely don't make any rash decisions when you're feeling emotional, and that I suggest that you don't go, even though you should reach out to your support network when you're ready, to make sure that you're not just going and bad-mouthing people, the organization. Get those feelings under control before you go out to your network. And I talk a lot about getting your reorg story ready, so that you have kind of a script that's depersonalized and forward, like future thinking and positive, rather than spreading all this negativity around, because you can't take that back once it's out there.
That's such a good point you raise about not bad mouthing, because especially on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Activity on LinkedIn is very searchable, very public. So yeah, try and not do it on LinkedIn or any social media really.
Do it with what I suggest people do is look into your EAP system. So a lot of companies have situations set up with an organization that will help employees, put them in contact with psychiatrists, psychologists, and support network. And then they can work through the emotions with a professional if they need to, and with their close family and friends. And then once you've built that strength and you've been able to let go, then it's time to start getting out. But you are so right, Kamara. Do not put these things up in social media. I really think that LinkedIn is not a place to share really a lot of negativity and to have very harsh debates, because it's all out there. It's all in writing. If you want to debate with someone and you want them to know your point of view, definitely PM them or give them a call or send them an email. But it's not a forum for those things, to my mind, because it can hurt you professionally.
For sure. Yeah. I'm just thinking about the whole depersonalization suggestion, which I think is a great thing. What tactics do you think work the best? Like when you're feeling so personally attacked by, which I think it was a natural reaction, even though really logically, like we know it's not personal, but like, what are some tactics you suggest for separating yourself from that?
I would remind yourself all the qualities you do have and all the great work that you've done, and try to bring that to your mind when you're going through these things. Look at what's going on with the world right now. Again, easier than ever to not take it personally.
True.
And you know what? Sometimes we've done things that are wrong, right? And the other thing I would say is, if you feel like you had some responsibility in the fact that you've got laid off, understand what it is that happened and what you might do differently next time, but also forgive yourself. I always like to tell people, treat yourself like you would a close friend that you love. And because you would forgive a close friend for mistakes, and often we'll forgive our friends for mistakes that we won't forgive ourselves for. So give yourself a hug and say, I understand, we're not perfect. We're not born perfect. It's a journey. And then move on from there. But really take a look at what's happened. Like if your whole team has been let go, it's absolutely impossible that it was personal. Sometimes we're let go because we're the highest paid person on a team. So it could just be, often it's not even people who know you that are making these decisions. They're looking at boxes on an org chart and roles and salaries. And it could mean that you just were better paid than everyone else. So that's actually good news for you going forward, right? True.
When you say that, where people they don't know you, they're just looking at expenses and things like that, it makes me think of that movie. I think it's called Up in the Air.
Up in the Air, yeah.
Where he just went around and fired people. It really makes me think of that. Yeah. Good movie, anyway.
Yeah.
Oh,
and that's another way to depersonalize it. Like thinking about the fact that it might not even have been someone who knew you that made that decision. Yeah.
I think that's a great suggestion. And then, you were mentioning if you were treating yourself as a friend, or think of how you would treat yourself if you were your own good friend. But speaking of our friends and family, when is it appropriate to share with our friends, family network, professional networks, that we are a free agent,
Yeah.
let's say.
Well, through the program, I kind of positioned it day by day by day.
Mhm.
And it's on the second and third days of the program, we start talking about developing your reorg story. And so in a perfect world, everybody's different. That's
Right.
the important thing to know. But for one thing, I'm the kind of person where if there's a problem, I need to solve it right away and I need to get going and get busy. So if you lay me off, I'm already in interviews, I'm calling recruiters, I've like got this whole, like the next few days for me are really busy because that's what makes me feel better is taking action. So if you're that kind of person, go ahead, take action, talk to people. You might be really level-headed, but you just want to move forward, go ahead and do that. But if I like to think that people would tell their close family and friends as soon as possible, because that's a weight on your shoulders if you're not telling people, especially the people that depend on you financially.
For
so
sure.
making sure you talk to them and don't be afraid to ask for help. I find there's so many people in my network who are really good about asking for help. So many friends that are really good about that. And then a lot that aren't. And if you don't tell me you need help, then I don't know to help you. So reach out to your close family and friends and ask them for help if you need it. Show your vulnerability. Like I said, we've all been there. And then, sorry, my kids are just getting home, so they might make some noise. This is like real.
Welcome home, kids.
Yeah, even though I said be really quiet when you come in. Someone yelled hello, which is very nice.
Okay. That's okay.
So then I would say, when you asked about reaching out to your network and kind of broadcasting, I'm really in favor of taking what I call the signal flare approach to job searching. And that's when you do write a pretty, like in the First 30 program, we talk about the signal flare approach, and there's a template for how you actually put up a post on LinkedIn, how you get an email together with the resume that Kamara has written or reviewed for you. But then you send that out there. Make sure everything's polished, though. I was making, all joking aside,
right.
If you're not confident in your resume and you're not proud of sending it out, that's going to be a problem and it's going to be a barrier for you. So do make sure that you get that done. And then you can start sending out emails to your network. Be really specific about the types of roles and actually put in titles that you're looking for. And then say, if you know of anyone you can connect me with or any opportunities, I would be so grateful. And, then you've sent that out, you send it, give it a little personal note to everyone you know in the city you live in or wherever you're looking for work or the industry that you're in. Don't be shy, right? Again, I actually did that many, many years ago. It was during a recession. I was actually interviewed in the Globe and Mail because I got a job within a month of starting to search during a recession. And that's how I did it. LinkedIn wasn't available to me then, but I actually put an email together. I wrote to every single person whose email address I had in Toronto.
Amazing.
The very next day, I was contacted by what became my future employer, because it just so happened, I didn't even know this, that someone I knew was the VP of HR for a large company. They called the very next day, they contacted me.
That's incredible. So really no downtime at all. 1 month, that's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it depends on so many things, right? That's why I'm always promoting be reorg ready. Like I try to tell people all the time, and I'll be honest, people don't listen to me. And then they, imagine.
Yeah, relatable. Yeah. I mean, I guess I can understand, like, people get like busy with work and they're like, and things feel like they're going at a good pace. So I kind of get it, but I can relate to that because I advise people to be ready in a certain way as well, but doesn't always happen.
It's just, it's complacency, right? And I understand why it happens, because you're busy with things like I have the kids and you have, other things going on. You have a partner, a home to manage and clean and all those things. And then you're like, oh, am I really going to get my resume together when I have a great job? I'm working, right? It will take a lot of pressure off if things change.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And like, one thing that's also very important, and we've talked about this a lot, you and I, is having the clarity of what that future job might be if
Yeah.
you were to be laid off, so that your resume, when you are writing it, is focused towards that potential new job rather
Yeah.
than just updating it on the off chance that you might get laid off. It needs to be updated to a very targeted and focused direction. So
yeah, that's right. So knowing, and then I know you always advise you can't just have one resume that's for everything. You've
Right.
got to be able to figure out, have some great content, and then adapt that to whatever role that you want. But on that subject, the one thing that I think is really good for people to think about, I always suggest that if people want to think about what they want to do in their future career, think about what would get you out of bed on a Tuesday. Because I hear too many people say to me, I want to live in this neighborhood, I want a holiday here. It's like, well, where you live is important, of course, but like where you holiday, that's like 5% or 2% of your life.
Not much of your time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is going to get you excited to get out of bed on a Tuesday morning, and then kind of aim towards that? I mean, there's a lot more to it. But when you're thinking of your future career and what you want to do, because if you know what that is, I knew what I wanted to do about 10 years ago. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I had some idea that I wanted to write a book and I wanted to start a business. I started doing everything I needed to do, including financial planning, in order to be able to build this and to write that book. And and anybody can do that.
100%, 100%. To your point, like, it really starts with what do I want? Like, what will get me out of bed on a Tuesday? Why Tuesday, not Monday?
Because people are in bad moods on Monday, and I feel it's like the weight of the world on my shoulder. But by Tuesday, you're kind of in the swing of things. Things have started happening. You have more meetings going on. So it's like, that's the day. That's not a planning day, and it's not the most fun day, because Friday is still pretty far away. It's not far away now, though, but it's pretty far away. And so you're like, you've got to be, that's the time where I think you will know if you love your job or you don't.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I love that. So let's talk about temporary layoffs. I think I'm seeing this more in the US than Canada, but I could be wrong. Furloughing seems to be like more of an American thing than a Canadian thing, but I am seeing and hearing of people being temporarily laid off here.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Like, if someone temporarily laid off, like, what does the temporary part mean? Is that a month? Is that like 6 months? Is it indefinite? Like, what should they be expecting?
Well, what we hope and what we should expect is a lot of communication from our employer and an understanding about what that means. So normally your employer will give you a sense of when they will be able to come back to you with a decision. And they usually, I've been talking to quite a few people who are on furlough, and my experience has been, it may not always be the case, that their employers have been very, very good at keeping in touch with them and helping them understand when they'll hear back. Because what the company is saying to you is, we value you. We don't want to lose this role. We are also hoping for the best. You're seeing it a lot in events and a lot in the airline industry.
Right.
So because the hope is that those jobs will exist, and then the companies won't have to go out and hire a whole new, because hiring is complicated, as you know, right? Like, you have to put up the job ads and talk to people. There's a huge cost. And so what the company's saying to you is, we value you. We want you back. We hope this role is going to exist. Please stick with us. Right? It doesn't mean that you don't go and look for jobs if you're not feeling confident. Go and look for a new job. You know, honestly, a good employer will understand if you leave because you find another job. And, you know, if you are in the events industry or the airline industry, now is a really good time to think about skilling up and kind of looking at what transferable skills you have that you could take to other industries. Because even when we build back up, even when social distancing is kind of more limited and we can go back to work and travel, people aren't going to be doing it as much.
Right.
Because I talk a lot about imprinting and the power of imprinting, and how once we've formed a belief system, it's very difficult to change. We have an entire young generation right now who are going to feel nervous about shaking hands with people, hugging people, going to airports, traveling. So this is like not just a change for now. This is fundamentally changing. It has changed the world we live in. So I want everyone to think about watching TV, and when you see people hug or shake hands, you're like, oh, what do you? And you're like, oh yeah, of course. Like, this is not real.
They used to do that.
Wow, the olden days. So we need to be realistic. If we've been furloughed, we need to be realistic about what's the opportunity going to be, and should I be sticking with this particular career? Because if we look at, when I talk about people changing jobs every 2 to 3 years in the book, they're not just changing jobs, they're changing careers. Like, I think you did too, Kamara. Like, we've both totally changed careers.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's so true. And like I see it, we both see it a lot in our own work. And I would say generally when I'm writing a resume, I'm doing it for someone who wants to change careers. So it's change is a big thing for sure. So you were saying that with the temporary layoff, there's no obligation from the employee to stick around, right? They could go job search if they want. Is the employer bound to rehire them should the opening reopen?
My understanding, and I would encourage anyone to fact check, because I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that if you are furloughed, and even if you're laid off, the obligation of your employer is not to hire someone in that same position. There's a time frame on it. I don't know exactly what it is, because you can't say to someone, I'm laying you off and you're part of this restructuring, and then 2 weeks later, a job ad pops up for the exact same role that you were laid off from, right? So that's a way of also protecting employees from wrongful dismissals, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So, and I would say that's limited to, my knowledge is in this area would be more Canadian. So if we have people in the US joining, then please don't take my word for it. That is my understanding. And definitely if your employer furloughs you or lays you off and then hires for that exact same position right away, it's definitely it's something you want to investigate.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't want to get too deep into the legal stuff because I'm not a lawyer. We're not lawyers. But when, let's say you are laid off, it's not a furlough, it's not temporary, you are laid off, you're given, the notice in writing. I don't think all of us would have severance available to us, but if we are presented with severance, what do you recommend people do before they sign off?
Well, first of all, it benefits both you and your employer if you do not sign that in the room.
Okay.
Because say I get laid off and I sign off in the room, I can later go to a lawyer and accuse my employer of pressuring me to sign off in the room. So if there's anyone in HR, they probably on the call, they probably know this. So that I would caution anyone against. If you're feeling pressured, you shouldn't, because there's no time limit. They can't take your severance away in the moment that you're in the meeting, and nobody should want that. So what your business wants is they want you to go home. They want you to relax and then take a day or two, read through the materials. If you feel like you want to talk to a lawyer, that is totally within your right to do. Your business would have a lawyer consulting with them as well, right? So legal documents are very, very complicated. So making sure that you've gone through all of the nuts and bolts of the document. And then my advice, so the problem is, when you're looking at that document, sometimes you're in an emotional state and you're angry. And then I get, I'm like the phone a friend for everyone that's been laid off. So my friends and friends of friends and their dog and their, they are all calling me when they get laid off. And I noticed that at the beginning, some people get very litigious and litigious minded. And then I think like this, again, we're in a small world. Have you been treated fairly? Is it worth considering that maybe looking at it from your employer's point of view? Because, if you kick up a lot of sand and you end up being like way out of your legal depth, and then you totally misunderstand what the laws are and you're asking for, the moon on a popsicle stick, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where you've alienated yourself.
Right.
And there's people behind these layoffs. So you have HR, you have your legal team. They're all going to know about this. And it's not to say that if you're not being treated properly, that you shouldn't take action and do your research and have the conversations. Manage how you do that and manage what you ask for. Because I've been in some situations where people have really gone overboard and everyone knew. And I kind of felt like, oh dear, that's not a great situation for that individual. And how are they going to build from there later? In fact, I write about it in the book as well. Yeah. Obviously no names attached to it.
Of course.
Yeah.
I guess it really comes down to like people talk. Like people, news gets around. Do you really want that reputation following you around throughout the rest of your professional career? And you don't want to do anything that will make your job search harder for you than it's already going to be in an already challenging time. So,
and your future hard for you. And one of the things that surprises me over my life is I think the people that I've worked with would be shocked to know when I get called for a reference for them from someone. It's very surprising to me. And like a lot of people, like if they know you, they'll call you up and say, hey, you used to work here. Did you know so-and-so? And, I can say that if I were that person, I would be absolutely shocked that someone called me about them and I happen to know the hiring manager for that job. So that's all to say, like, we don't know who people are checking in with, especially now with LinkedIn, because you can see who worked where. And you're like, oh yeah, Amy worked there. I wonder if she worked with this person. Maybe I should give her a call. Leave well. That's what I always say. And in the book, the chapter is when you leave well.
Leave well. I love that. Leave well. Be reorg ready.
Be reorg ready. Well. And leave well. And don't ask for the moon on a popsicle stick.
Don't ask for the moon on a popsicle stick. I like that one. That's really good. So we've talked about obviously dealing with the emotions. So separating ourselves, like depersonalizing the layoff as best we can. We've talked about notifying our network, reaching out to our network on a personalized basis. It doesn't sound like we want to put out this LinkedIn update that says, hey, I'm available now, which we see a lot of. So those are a couple of really big, important steps. What would happen next? What would be the next most important thing to do?
So just going back one step, I think that we should actually let people on our LinkedIn know that we're available now. Yeah.
Broadcast? Okay.
When we're ready, you can write a post, you can write a little LinkedIn article but we have to make sure that we write it again once we're past the emotion, and we want to make sure that we have a conscientious friend read it for us before we put it up, to make sure there's no typos, and B, to make sure that it's in the right tone and it's not going on and on and on, short and sweet. So yes, we do want to do that. And then once we've spoken to our family and friends, once we've got our reorg story ready, then once we've kind of put our feelers out there a little, I think it's in making sure that your resume is looking great and ready to go. And then also your LinkedIn profile. I find people tend to, and you know this, Kamara, better than most, people just ignore their LinkedIn profiles forever. They've got a picture from like 20 years ago and no background, which makes you look kind of dated. So making sure you have that background up. but then they start going out there, and I talked about imprinting and how we kind of like, we take a blueprint in our mind of our very first interactions with people. So it's really important that your LinkedIn profile reflect what you want to say to the world about who you are today, not who you were 15 years ago. And like using a LinkedIn platform basically that was from 15 years ago, we want to be current. So making sure we do that. And it doesn't have to be huge. Like people lament over their LinkedIn, I find, when it could be a few small fixes to start. And then go deeper and get it set up, get yourself set up for success. So once you've done that, then I would say start networking, and first network with your close family and friends. I actually ran a networking session today with Lighthouse Labs. And what I told people was, if you haven't, especially if you haven't networked for a while, it's much better to start with what I call friendlies. Like your close family, your friends, your former colleagues, because if you haven't networked for a while, for even those of us who do all the time, you're gonna make mistakes. And so best make them with the people who know and trust and respect you. And then they can be like, oh, Amy, when you said in your email, and then you're like, oh gosh, yeah, thank you. I won't do that again, right? So start with, and you get rejected a lot. We all get rejected a lot, by the way. You and I have businesses, Kamara. Like how many, if you are not getting rejected every single day, you're not doing your job. So yeah, I said today, like if you are getting out there and you feel rejected every day, I'm proud of you, because it means that you're doing what it takes to get to where 100%. You need to be. Yeah. So just know that we all face it, all of us. I don't care who you are. So get out there after you've kind of contacted your friendlies, and then start getting out there and reaching out to your broader network. Contact recruiters, talk to them. Don't have too high expectations of recruiters either, because a recruiter really works for the client. If they have a job, they'll be really quick to let you know, and if they think you're the right candidate, but they're not there to write your resume. They're not there to, share yours. Yeah, exactly. They're not there to find you a job. But if you have a good relationship with recruiters, they can be amazing resource. But yeah, what I would say, and we talked about it today, is don't ask the strangers and like people who are kind of like your third connections. Don't ask them for too much right away. We know like you need a job right away, and I get it, but people save their best stuff for the people who are closest to them. And if you start reaching out to people, like, I don't know about you, but I get a ton of emails every week asking me for something.
Yes.
And like, we run businesses. I can't spend, like, I'm here now because, because I love you, and because like I want to help people, but I can't talk to people I don't know. And have one-to-ones with them. I set up resources that I can offer them that are free resources that they can leverage, like webinars and things like that. And you've been on one of those. But your distant network is not going to have the same connection to you and want to do that. So first start by connecting with people you want to connect with, like their content. Engage with their content. Send them things. If they've written an article and you've like, oh yeah, I just read an article about this, send it to them. Get on their radar, and then maybe gently reach out to them about having a conversation. I know it's not easy and it's a waiting game, but relationships take time for a reason, and you can't skip steps. Never works.
You really can't. I couldn't agree more. Like, networking is the long game. Relationships are the long game. You're playing the long game. And I like how you talk about friendlies. I'm not going to forget that. Friendlies, like reaching out to, and I've said in the past, network in your own backyard. So
I love that too.
Thanks. But more so when I think of backyard, I'm thinking of like alumni networks and things like that. But we're getting even more friendly in the friendlies with your recommendations, which is family and friends, like very close people who are very close to you, which I love. I mean, why not start there? That's logical. And like you said, you can make mistakes when networking with them. And I like what you're saying, especially about sharing content and engaging on social media with people who you want to network with. I like to think of becoming like a raving fan of someone who is of influence because it's noticeable. Like people notice when you're sharing their content or engaging or commenting, liking, asking questions. It's all noticed. So I think that's great, and people will be more apt to give you a hand if they've seen you hanging around.
Yeah, and you know the other thing I would say, and that's really good. I love the raving fan idea. One thing I would say is sometimes people reach out to me and I get it because it's stressful being in transition, but I get notes like this.
Oh dear, yes.
Talking all about their situation, how they're feeling, what's going on. And it's very, very difficult because we've all got our set of emotions that are going on, especially now, right? We've all got our lives going on in the background, even if we look like everything's going really well on LinkedIn, and professionally, maybe it is going really well at the moment, but your professional life is only one aspect of your life. And when someone kind of overburden someone they don't know with their entire story and then suggests they meet, it's like, oh my goodness, like I feel like I'm going to be talking, and I mentioned this today too, like Eeyore, you know, from Winnie the Pooh, like I'm going to be talking to Eeyore for an hour and no thank you, right? And like, and also don't start with being about you. Start with it about being about, not me, and I don't mean me in particular, I mean anyone you're talking to.
Yes.
Lead with them.
Yeah.
I noticed that you did this. I noticed that you worked here. Or something like, I love what you've done with blah, blah, blah. Start on a positive with something that is about them and not about you.
Yes, 100%. To your point about having like long dissertations in a message, another Amy Miller, she brought up a good point about networking, which is like, don't create work for me.
Yes. She is, and you know, if you send someone a LinkedIn request, and we've all seen these, it's like, I want to talk to you about your sales strategy, and I want to do. You're like, oh gosh, as soon as I accept this person's LinkedIn, I got a job. So no, thank you. I can't.
Nothing could be more off-putting in my opinion. Like, I got other stuff I got to do. I don't need to like come up with a way to impress somebody I don't know. Anyway, I just want to check in with our audience here. If you have any questions for Amy, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I'd love to hear what key takeaways you've been picking up, some nuggets of wisdom that you've been picking up from Amy so far. Put that in the chat as well. Love to hear it. So I'm curious if we could just touch a bit on outplacement and what that is. It wasn't until I got into the career space that I had any idea what outplacement was. And I don't think that many of us encounter outplacement until we're laid off, really.
Right. You don't even know it exists until you're in a program. So what outplacement is, it's like a company is trying to help the people that they've laid off get over the experience of layoffs and kind of get back to work. And I actually didn't know what outplacement was either until I was in it. And I'm like, this is great. Like, but I feel like I could do this a lot better. But, there's some other great outplacement companies out there. But what I like to do with the First 30 program is it's not just about you getting over this layoff and then getting into another job. It's really about figuring out through this process more about yourself as a professional, and then how to manage the rest of your career. So and then you and I work together, Kamara. So you're the resume expert in the First 30 program. So when companies hire First 30 to work with their exiting employees, all of the resumes that we get go to you and your team to review so that they come back to people. We help with LinkedIn profiles as well. There's a LinkedIn profile course. There's a resume writing course. There's a resume writing exercise that you, of course, have to do before you send Kamara your resume so that it's in a great condition to send it to you for review.
Mhm.
But there's all these little pieces and some businesses like First 30 as well has some one-to-one coaching. Now it's all virtual, of course. So there's some of that to help talk to you about, what, your options are to move forward with your career. So there's all these pieces. Typically, people don't find their own outplacement. Typically, what happens is a business will decide to offer outplacement as part of your leaving package. You can ask, definitely, if you want to negotiate it, you can. If you do, of course, ask for First 30, but you can. And you can, sometimes they'll give you a budget to go find your own. But typically an outplacement company, so I know that generally speaking, people wouldn't know what outplacement is, but if I'm speaking to people in HR, they definitely know the term outplacement. So they would look for companies that have a comprehensive offering to help people through, because everybody's different again. So some people are going to gravitate towards some subjects and some are going to gravitate towards others. So it's really to help you get over the job loss and move forward. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And your program, like I haven't seen a ton of outplacement programs, but your program, having worked through some of it myself as a test, and making sure I was familiar with the offering, I was so impressed by
Thanks.
what you put together for employees who are now embarking on a new job search. And just, it's like really, from what I saw, it's really like a soup to nuts program. Like it's everything, career wise. And it really sets, these, job seekers, employees up for success.
And one of the interesting things that I've changed a little during COVID is that I actually I've been offering clients that I will personally work with people who are in the First 30 program, because that's what I enjoy. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to set up the business so other people can take on other tasks within the business. And because of COVID, I thought it was really important to get as engaged as possible and also understand how the world is changing, because First 30 is not one of those programs that is always going to stay the same. We're always adapting and adding new resources and thinking through, like right now I'm thinking through, are people going to want to start their own businesses now? So maybe we need to have programming for people who want to be entrepreneurs, and how can we fit that into the program? So as I talk to people, I learn, but I'm also so excited about helping people one-to-one as well. It was never the intent when I was going into this, embarking on this journey, but now I'm doing it because I want to serve my clients as best as I can. And I also want to get right on the front lines and talk to people and find out how we can help them better and help guide them through this very, very difficult period in our history.
Yes, it certainly is very challenging. And I think that your commitment is really admirable, because I've seen some other work coming out of other outplacement firms, and they seem disconnected from employee. And First 30 is anything but disconnected. It's truly impressive in terms of the service that you are offering, the holistic service that you're offering to employees. And that's so great that you yourself are getting involved in, and you've done some career coaching with the folks that have joined the program. One thing I realized we haven't addressed, which people might be interested in, is what's the name? Like, I know, but where does the name First 30 come from?
Well, I first of all, right now, First 30 does both onboarding and outplacement. Okay. So we have two program offerings. And when I started, it was only outplacement. And I sat there and I thought, okay, what am I going to call this, right? Because you're going to live with that name for a really long time. Yeah. And I thought I wanted to make sense to people right away when they hear it. And I want to be able to build more programs. So truthfully, my dream, because I've worked with a lot of new Canadians, and I left Canada for 6 years and moved to England and came back and had to find a job once I got back. And I found it more difficult than you might expect, actually, to come back. I suffered what I would call reverse culture shock. And I thought, wow, if this is so hard for me, who's coming home, essentially, how difficult it is for people who are maybe English is their second language, they're coming here for maybe difficult circumstances. So I spent a lot of time working with new Canadians as I was writing the book. And my dream was to actually start a First 30 program for new Canadians and even give them access to it before they came to Canada. And so when I was thinking about the Outplacement program, I thought, oh, here's a business that could really make a difference in the outplacement industry, and companies would be really interested in purchasing because it's a much lower price point than they're normally used to paying for outplacement, but it's a really high quality service. But where, I really one day want to take this to be something else and to serve Canadians and, and even in time, maybe the US as well, because there's a lot of immigration to the US. And so I thought I didn't want to label it something that was specifically about outplacement. So I thought, first 30, you get that, like first 30 days in a new job, first 30 days of a layoff. It just intuitively makes sense. And as soon as I thought of it, I was like, one day I sat down, within a couple hours, I had a list of names, and that one was like right at the top of the list, and I was done.
That's awesome. What a great banner, and so many ways to use it. That's amazing. Actually, I'm really curious to hear about your transition back from the UK to Canada. There may be some future Canadian newcomers in the audience, or newcomers. And I also work with a lot of people who have just recently obtained their PR and they're planning their move. So what was your success? Like what set you up for success? It sounds like it was a challenge, but what solidified your success in returning?
Well, it wasn't successful at first.
It wasn't? Okay.
No. And what I did was I actually started teaching for a private school. Okay. So that's not a bad thing. It was just that I wanted to continue with a career. And at first I thought I would go back to corporate, and it didn't. And I had a great career in England. So I worked for Unilever in corporate strategy. It was like an amazing job. And I came back, and one mistake I made was not moving with the company and rather quitting and then coming here and then trying to start again.
Oh, okay.
Silly me. Like I said, we all make mistakes. We just have to hug ourselves and forgive ourselves and move forward. And then oddly enough, it was funny because we were talking about a dog. I started a dog walking business because it's a big industry. And I thought, you know what? I could start a dog walking business and maybe open a franchise, like a dog camp or whatever it was. It turned out I didn't love that profession as much as I thought I was going to love it. So I thought, oh my goodness, I better get. So that's when I did the whole signal flare approach and sent out my resume. And it turned out one of the clients that I was working with was the VP of HR. So it wasn't successful at first.
Okay.
And one of the biggest mistakes that I made was expecting that in the Canadian market, my experience overseas was going to be valued here. Employers like the Unilever name, definitely. It's a great company, but they don't really care that if you worked in the US, that's a good thing. That's seen as positive. If you worked in anywhere else, and that's why and you probably do this too, Kamara, but when people say they worked for Deloitte, but they worked in another country, I advise them, don't be specific about which country you worked in, unless it's the US. Don't be specific about that. Just put Deloitte. They'll know Deloitte, right? But if you say Deloitte and then it's Deloitte Australia, they're going to think, they might not look at you in the same way as they would if you worked for just Deloitte and they didn't know where it was. And then they meet you and they like you and they see that you have all the skills and qualities they're looking for in a candidate, but you may not even be considered if they saw that. So it's hard. It's hard when you're coming here because employers want Canadian experience, which I actually didn't have much of. I mean, a waitress when I was in university, but that didn't count for much when it came to getting a corporate job here. So it was a lot of kind of failures on my part and really scrambling to make it happen. And then finally figuring out what I needed to do to get back into the industry. And the other thing that I learned is I had to do exactly what I was doing. It wasn't a really good time to change career paths.
Okay.
So I did market research, and I love it now, but I actually wasn't in love with the profession, like that industry, when I came back, and I really wanted to try to get into something else, actually HR. So I say that I Trojan horsed my way into the HR industry. But I found that the only way I could get a good job and a job that I wanted to do was actually to go and do what I had always done, rather than try to pivot my career once I came here.
That's a really good point. And it's interesting because there's a lot of people that are saying, COVID, pandemic, now is the best time to change your career. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, you could unfortunately be laid off and need to reassess some things, and that could result in a change. I wouldn't say that I would recommend making a big career change now, because I don't think it's going to be very easy. Is it possible? Sure. But I don't think it's going to be an easy thing. And I mean, not that coming from another country to Canada is the exact same thing as job searching in a pandemic. But, I think when we've already been hugely disrupted and a move across overseas is also disruptive, I don't think we want to change careers now. But that's just my thought.
Yeah. And I would say the other thing is I find that a lot of people, when they work for a business or in an industry, they brand themselves. So if you work for just Coke, let's say, and you have your LinkedIn profile and there's like Coke logo on your background picture, and you're really branding yourself as an employee of Coke. And now that might not matter if you stay at Coke forever, your whole life.
Right.
But when it will matter is if you're trying to find another job and you kind of imprinted as your brand is tied to Coke. So be your own brand.
Yes.
People often said to me, they didn't even know, they knew I was in market research. And it's funny now because so few people know that is my background anymore, because I've written a book and then started this business and totally reestablished myself as an expert in careers rather than an expert in research. But I mean, one helped with the other. But they said, I never associated you with a company. To me, you were just Amy, a great researcher. I had no idea. Half the time I didn't even know where you worked.
Well, that's a major win then. And I totally agree. You want to brand yourself. Like, you are your own brand.
Exactly.
So like, one of my major pet peeves is when I see employer logos on resumes. That bothers me. I'm okay with it on LinkedIn because it adds credibility, but on resume, adding logos in, this marketing document for you. Brand yourself, own your own brand.
Yeah, exactly.
So you really nailed that then, if you were seen as the market research person and not affiliated with any one company. So
and now it's funny, people say to me, wow, it's so weird. They knew me from my research days, and like, I don't even associate you with research anymore. Now,
well, then that's another one. You successfully totally rebranded, transformed your brand. And that's fantastic.
It took a lot of work. I had to write a book and launch a business to make that happen. But hopefully, if people are looking to do that, they don't have to go to those great lengths to make it happen for themselves. But you have to gain credibility. That was my way of gaining credibility in a new industry. And you would have to look, if you were changing industries, do you start writing LinkedIn posts for a new industry and write about the insight, or talk to people and use their quotes and get to be known in that industry? And so it's credible.
Yeah, that's a really good point about kind of positioning yourself as I don't like the term thought leader. That's not my favorite, but more so like an expert in your field. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. As you pointed out, LinkedIn posts, and just engaging with people that are on brand for you, like engaging with the people who are already established thought leaders.
Yeah.
In the area in which you want to transition. And there's just a lot of ways to really build that credibility. As you say, you don't have to write a book.
No, you don't have to write a book.
In a good way.
One last thing that because I know we're kind of running out of time. The last thing that I wanted to let people know is we know this is a hard time, but what that means in reality is that you may not this might not be the time where you're climbing the ladder in your career. This might be the time when you're like on that hike up the mountain and you stopped and you sat on like a flat surface and had some cheese and hopefully you packed some wine. But that might be, you might find yourself making lateral moves when we've always been trained to make progressive moves. Please don't put too much pressure on yourself to keep moving up in a time when it's really difficult to do that. And please don't worry about how it's going to be seen, because we are all going to see this as a time where people made compromises, did things differently. And the people that succeed through all of this and through these layoffs and into the new world are the people who are willing to adapt and do what it takes. Like I just told you, I couldn't find a job. So literally I was picking up dog poop for a year. That's what I did. And I was fine to do it because it was rite of passage. And we may find ourselves in these situations. It will be okay. Keep working hard at it. It will be okay. But this is not the time to put too much pressure on yourself to like climb up the ladder and move.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's that conditions could not be more difficult, in my opinion, yeah, we are all affected by this, and people understand really. And in my opinion, it's never been easier to explain a disruption in your career.
Exactly,
because it's a lot of external factors that are out of your control. So,
but make sure you're doing something.
Yes.
Because when you sit down with an employer, if it's 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, they don't want to hear that you sat and watched like Netflix for the year. They want you to have your story for what you did with your time, whether it's that you homeschooled your kids, whether it's you wrote a book or, got interested in like floral arrangements. Like make sure you did something with that time that you can explain. Otherwise you will put people off if they get the sense that you didn't do. And maybe you learned to dance. Maybe you became a cyclist. Maybe you became a long distance runner. I don't know what it is. Maybe you raised a puppy. But make sure that you're not just, it's not just a gap.
Right. I totally agree with that. We really want to show that we've been using the time productively, however that looks. And also going back to one of your earlier points about upskilling, now would be a good time. In terms of taking additional training. There's a lot of free training. Like I haven't done much continuing education for myself lately, but I've been bad with that.
You've been doing a lot though.
Well, working, but I haven't been doing much studying on my own. And I finally did take a course that was totally free, and it was outstanding. Wow. So it was on Coursera. So there's a lot available to us for free. And so we just need to bring the time. They'll come with the free course, and then we can show that we've really been using our time productively. And yeah, it's amazing what's out there to learn for free and in a self-directed way. And even take, as you said, if you want to write a book or take on a self-directed project that really flexes your muscles in the skills you either want to upskill or keep fresh. I think that's a great way to spend your time.
Sure. I'm trying to learn how to dance at home. And by the way, I'm terrible. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. What type of dance?
Well, Okay, well, people are really going to laugh because it's kind of silly, but I got on Facebook, I guess I'm the profile of like a middle-aged mom. I got these, the figure eight, they kept popping up, these ads, and I thought, oh, you know what? Like, I've always wanted to learn how to dance. This is a fun way to combine dance and fitness and have some fun and keep smiling. I love it. I love it. It's ridiculous. I probably look ridiculous doing it. I did it tonight before our session, but it's so fun. So, and nobody could see me. So what does it matter, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's so great to have the life beyond work. I just signed up for another improv class, so I'm starting that in November. That's kind of my hobby. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have those positive things to keep our sanity, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I just want to make sure I've got all your social properly in the description. So where's the best place to follow you and reach you?
The absolute best place is LinkedIn. So yeah, just look up Amy Davies on LinkedIn, First 30. You'll find me there. That's the by far best place to find me. Yeah.
Excellent. So I've got that linked. I've got Amy's profile linked in the description below, as well as a link to First 30. And I think I've got your Twitter in there too.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And we always run free webinars, as you know. During COVID, we're running free webinars every couple of weeks for people on different subjects. So if you sign up for our mailing list, you'll find out all about those. If you don't know how to sign up, just send me a quick note on LinkedIn and I'll show you where to go.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think that's at first30ready.com, is it?
That's right. And you just scroll down the page and then there's an option. Don't ask for a demo unless you really need one. But there's a link you can click on to join our mailing list. Right. Once you're on that mailing list, you will get all the mail. We don't bombard people, but we do send them information about how to register for all our free sessions.
Yes, your emails are very like at a good interval, and I receive them, and you have such amazing sessions.
Oh, thanks.
And they're just so diverse and just cover a wide range of needs and interests. So yeah, definitely sign up for Amy's list over at first30ready.com. So anyway, thank you so much for your time, Amy.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
A pleasure. Thank you so very much. And thank you everyone for attending. And I hope or know that you really walked away with some valuable insights into how to manage layoff. And if you are in the middle of layoff, I really hope that this gave you some positive inspiration and that you will move through it as quickly as you can. So thank you, everyone. All the best to you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.